and welcome to Wine, Women, and Wisdom.
$375. Like, why does this wine cost this much? Generally, what it really comes down to is actually what's inside and how it's made. Hi, I'm Sommelier Andre Houston Mack, and today we're going to be tasting 12 different sparkling wines from all over the world, ranging in price from $17 to over $500. We're going to find out if expensive champagne is worth the price and where you can get a great sparkling wine on a budget. I think the biggest communication with sparkling wine is that this is a party. And I feel like every single day, especially during these times, we have something to celebrate, not only with champagne, but any sparkling wine from around the world. And today, I'm gonna show you a lot of those. The wine that we have here is the Shook from South Australia. This is sparkling Shiraz. And I think most people don't have a notion that like something this exists. This does exist. This is a really fun wine. We're just gonna loosen the cage. The cage is just a safety item to make sure that the pressure from in the bottle doesn't shoot out the cork. They tell you not to take your hand off the cage. We want to hold the bottle from the bottom, firmly grasping the top, and you want to twist the bottle back and forth. Slowly, you start to feel the cork come out, let it air come out, so you can barely hear it. And there's sometimes on TV, you hear it like pop and shoot everywhere and all those kind of things, but you actually want to drink that, you want to consume that. So you try to want to keep everything in the bottle. Pouring the wine, you start to see the bubbles start to form. That's called a mousse. The finer the mousse, the more refined the wine is. A little bit of blackberry, blueberry, a little bit of cocoa nib. Wow, that's so good. It's pretty rich, it's round. Definitely for people who drink red wine and expect those kind of flavors and tannins. There's lots of tannins in this wine. So this wine is carbonated with a traditional method, and this is what all that means. It's a wine that goes through 2 fermentations. The first fermentation that actually turns the sugars into alcohol to make it what we call a still wine. And the secondary fermentation actually happens inside the bottle. They add a little bit of sugar and yeast, and then they put a crown top on it. So the bottle's inverted. They put in these wooden racks called a riddling rack. And each time over the day, the wines are turned 1/4 of an inch each so that the dead yeast cells actually collect in the neck of the bottle. After that point, it's a long drawn out process. The necks are frozen, the crown tops are open, the pressure through the bottle shoots out all the dead yeast cells, and then the wines are topped off with a little bit of sugar to kind of balance the acid in the wine, and then a regular cork top is put on top of it. The price point of this is it's inexpensive considering the method that it's done. The more hands on it means more labor, means traditionally more expensive. But now that method is actually can be done using machines. Is the reason why we have this wine at this price point. So next up we have Cava. This is Spain's answers to champagne. And this particular producer is Villa de la Plata. So this here is a little sticker guaranteeing the authenticity that it is Cava. Most countries have laws governing how wines are made. If you use grapes that aren't from that particular area, those are grape varietals, you can't call it Cava. So it's kind of guaranteeing the quality of this particular wine. So pale straw color, this is beautiful. Really aromatic. Lots of straw, hay, apple, just a little bit of quince. There's a little bit of like what I call oxidation. The wine just kind of tastes old. It's almost like a caramel apple, like it almost seems like it's kind of roasted a bit. So today, when we look at a lot of different bottles of sparkling wine, they'll have this saying Brut Natural, Extra Brut, those kind of things. That really refers to the dryness of the wine. The drier the wine means it has less sugar in it, and those actually happen after the secondary fermentation. At this particular point, they top off the bottle with a dosage. So it's like a liqueur of sugar and finished wine to kind of balance out the wine and to kind of create the style. So this particular wine, there's no sugar or anything added to the end of the bottle. This wine is great, I think, for the price point. It's amazing. They offer a lot of what champagne has at a fraction of the cost, and that's why I've always been drawn to it. So next up we have Prosecco from True Wine Connoisseurs, and this is from Italy. Prosecco is a cool climate place. Cool climate grapes are really great for sparkling wine. A little bit of grapefruit, just a little bit of fig. Wow, white peach, slight bit of nutmeg. This is great, this is refreshing, easy to drink. I think you do a disservice by adding anything to it. Prosecco is used by adding orange juice to make a mimosa. This actually has some character. Prosecco is a protected name place, meaning that there's laws and regulations that gives it a standard of quality that I think is great and inexpensive, and I think it's something that everybody can experience. This is generally made what we like to call the tank method. The white wine is made, it's gone through the first fermentation, but the secondary fermentation happens in a tank. This is one way to bring down the cost of something like Prosecco because it's done in very large batches. Overall, I'm a super huge fan of this wine. This one I feel like is alive and, like I said, has some real kind of complexities and depth to it. So this is Chateau de Luxe. This is all from the Willamette Valley in Oregon. And this is Pet Nat, which is short for Petulant Natural, an ancient way of making sparkling wine. It does have a crown top finish, which you find in most beer bottles. This is a blend of Pinot Noir, some Riesling, Gamay, and I believe a little bit of Chardonnay. There's a little bit of funk here, Pinot Noir funk, I like that. Bright, fresh, lots of acid, raspberries. Definitely tastes natural to me. It tastes wild in a way, if that's a term that I could use. So this wine doesn't go through a secondary fermentation. These are all the bubbles that are trapped during the primary fermentation. And what you can generally see on the bottom is you start to see a little bit of this sediment here. Those are all the dead yeast cells that we talked about before. Natural wine is all made using natural yeast. The interesting part about using this particular method is that you can't really control the fermentation. There's variations between each bottle. And for a lot of people who enjoy these type of wines, that's the beauty of the wine. Come on, man, you're trying to get me in trouble, man. No, there's a lot. You know, I think in wine, which is pretty much stodgy and traditional, anytime that you introduce anything new, there's always resistance. Big versus small, natural versus non-natural. For me, I like wine if it's good, and this wine is good. This is called Sek, and this is from Von Winning in Germany. This is a Riesling sparkling wine. Doing research over the years, I discovered that Germans were the largest consumers of sparkling wine. First I was like, oh, they drink a lot of champagne. And that wasn't it. They make their own sparkling wine that they use and consume on an everyday basis called Sek. So first off, I see kind of the pale yellowish color, brioche, more caramel apple, slightly confectionery. Just a fun way to say sweet. Wow, that's pretty fascinating. A typical characteristic that you get with Riesling is this petro kind of quality to it, like almost like I'm at the car pumping gas in my car, I can smell that. I know that gasoline is not a favorable note, but trust me, this is definitely something, once you experience it and understand it, that you'll kind of gravitate to it. I think this wine is probably expensive for Americans. The fact that it's imported to the United States just means that it's gonna cost more. We are off to South Africa. I told you they make sparkling wine all over the world. This is called Black Elephant Vintners. So this is a Chardonnay and Pinot Noir. So straw pear color, yeasty, toasted notes. I think the first thing I noticed is the wine is pretty ripe. Red apples, a little bit of pear. So when I talk a lot about like ripe fruit, that does indicate like where it's grown. This is South Africa, but it does have a diverse climate. And what we talk about a lot in wine is, microclimate, so a climate within a climate. I look at the alcohol in the back of this bottle, it's 11.5%, so it's somewhat low, meaning that they're picking early or that it comes from a really cool climate. This particular wine is called MCC, Method Cap Classique, and it's their version of traditional method. South Africa does have a robust wine industry. It's something that they've been doing for years. I think they make some really great wines from Steen to Cabernet. I've never had a sparkling wine from there, but I think this is stellar. Maybe we should drink more. Next up is Schramsberg Blanc de Noir, 2017 from California. This is actually one of my favorite domestic sparkling wines. This is really beautiful, almost kind of like the salmon pink color. Golden apple, a little bit of apricot, brioche, some toast notes to it. A little bit of like mango, pineapple, really dry, really long finish. And in blind tasting, I could call this champagne. This is red grapes that are making this particular wine. So the phrase Blanc de Noir means white from black. The way that red wine actually gets any of its color, a lot of red wine is through the wines kind of soaking on the skins. White wine is made a little bit differently. All the grapes are put into a press and then it's pressed. The wine is pressed, the juice comes out. Everything that's left over is thrown away. It's not used anymore. So once you press it, it's done. There is a little bit of skin contact here, hence producing this kind of wonderful, beautiful salmon color. This price point of $50 is kind of really encroaching upon champagne, and you start to think to yourself, why want to go look for champagne? I think for people who are really into sparkling wine and into wine, the idea that this person is making this quality of sparkling wine in California and not in Champagne, I think is a feat, and I think it's a cool thing to kind of experience. This is Michel Gonnet, 2012, and this is champagne. This is all Chardonnay, so Blanc de Blanc. When I see like champagne on a bottle, my anticipation is that it will be good. You can really taste the difference between this and other sparkling wines from around the world. There was a movement in Champagne that happened called grower champagne, where the people who actually grew the grapes actually made the champagne. And this is one of those wines that was responsible for that. Very small bubbles, you can start to see that here, just in the middle of the glass, almost like neon green with a little bit of yellow tinge. Brioche, white flowers. Apple, a little bit of boss pear. I kind of get that caramelization. That means that the wine has some bottle maturity to it. Mineral, Flint. Man, that's good. Champagne is really, really complicated. There's lots of rules and regulations just in order to be able to put champagne on the label. The first and most important is that it actually has to be made from the Champagne region of France. The French talk a lot about terroir, champagne, the soil, like it can't be replicated. There's lots of fossils there, there's lots of chalky soil there, and that alone adds complexity to wines that you wouldn't find anywhere else. There's a certain amount of grapes that you can use. You can only hand harvest, you can only hand riddle. These are all things that make this wine labor intensive, hence therefore the price. One of the best examples of champagne at a reasonable price is this particular wine. This is $57, and so this is the great part about what we started to talk about as the grower champagne movement. The idea of being able to make it themselves kind of keeps the price down a little bit. The price isn't regulated. And also I think that you get a better quality at these particular grower champagnes than you would in anything that's like mass produced. I feel that you get the most bang for your buck. So still in Champagne, this is a rosé from Mousson Leroux, 100% Pinot Noir. So you see the color here, rosé, so it does have some skin contact. If you look in the center of the glass, it's a very small stream of really small bubbles. This is what you really pay for when you talk about champagne, and this is a sign of quality. Absolutely, it makes for a better drinking experience. Some of the larger bubbles, to me, seem to kind of get in the way, but also kind of dissipate pretty fast. This is a steady stream, it's still going. And I think that's from being in the bottle directly versus in a tank method, which is pretty big. Really beautiful, elegant. You get like the elements of like a forest floor. There's leaves, damp earth. Also smells like meat tenderizer to me. I probably wouldn't use that in a professional setting, but that's what it smells like. Wow, this is kind of more of a candied apple, not sweet, a little bit of white peach, nectarine, slightly grassy. So this is called Rosé Sommelier, and Sommelier means blood. It's a bleed off. So this is like just basically a light pressing, and as the juice runs over the skins, it picks up a light color. It makes sense for me that this wine is $90. I actually think that it could be a little bit more expensive. This wine is Grand Cru, so these come from the top vineyards within the Champagne region. So in Champagne, you have Champagne, and then it's broken down into several different regions. And then with that, the vineyards are ranked from Premier Cru to Grand Cru, Grand Cru being the best. This comes from a particular vineyard that's deemed Grand Cru. So much like real estate, it's about location, 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 and with that comes the price. This is Ridgeview. This is from England. This is 100% Chardonnay. So in that term that we use in France, Blanc de Blanc. Lovely mousse, yellow straw color here. Brioche, caramelized apples. Very dry, really great acid, and then some minerality that follows. You think of a place like England that's so far north, very cold, you wouldn't expect them to make something like this. The colder it is, the problem that you have is that you're getting the grapes to ripen. Whatever you want to say, global warming, climate change, the earth is just a lot warmer place than it used to be. You're really starting to see some really great wines come from this particular area. So this wine clocks in about $116, and you start to ask yourself why, right? But you start to look at it, this wine is from one single vineyard. So, like I said, location, location, location. The more specific you can be about a particular wine, generally the quality's up, which also means that the price is up. This is a vintage dated wine. This is 2014. It's made in the traditional method. Everything's hand harvested, hand picked. And those are all things that lead to a higher quality, which ultimately results in a higher price. This wine is the first choice for Buckingham Palace. It's one of the most celebrated wines in that country, and from tasting it, I can see why. Continuing on into Champagne, this is Philippe Pinot Clos de Gauisse 2011. This is 100% Pinot Noir, and this will come in at a $375 price tag. See the color a little bit, golden straw, starting to darken. That means that the wine has some bottle maturity to it. White wine, as they start to age, they become darker in color. It's the opposite for red wine. This is pretty beautiful. Marzipan, quite yeasty. Really refined, almost smoky on the palate. And then what's interesting about this particular wine, that it will evolve, over the next 20 to 30 minutes, it will change. You'll start to taste more of something and less of something else. This is a beautiful expression of champagne. This is why people drink old champagne. As you can see, there's still really tiny, tiny bubbles coming out of the bottom, but as the wine ages, the bubbles become less and less. Ultimately, champagne is a still wine that becomes sparkling. You really have to start with a great raw product in order to make sparkling wine. Clos de Gauisse is considered their tête de cuvée, the top wine that they make. It's only the top grapes. It's aged a lot longer. All of those things play a role into the price. And then again, we talk a lot about hands touching it. If you can't mechanically harvest, it's hand harvested. If it's hand harvested, then it's hand sorted. If it's hand sorted, then it's hand riddled. And so for at least 2 years, 3 years, or whatever they require to be special, someone's in the cave turning these bottles. That all costs money, and ultimately, it's the reason why these wines cost the way that they do.
Taste $300 better than
It does taste $300. This wine actually tastes like a tête de cuvée. Like this, to me, this wine has stature. This wine has charisma. It has all the things that I would want in a champagne. This is Cristal. This is from Louis Roederer, a prominent champagne house. This is their tête de cuvée from 2008. And what makes this pretty special, this is Cristal Rosé. So what do you get for $550 a bottle? Well, you get this kind of nice box here. This is like great, a little latch and it opens up. Some little notes. It's got this beautiful cellophane. You know what this looks like? That butterscotch candy that your grandmama had during the holidays, right? Yeah, your grandmama didn't have butterscotch candy. Very small bubbles, really toasty. Tart apple, some strawberries, lots of yeasty kind of bready kind of qualities, pretty long finish, pretty ripe. No, I like it. I mean, I don't know if I would like scream to the top of, at the top of my lungs that this is like the best wine I ever had. It puts most people out of the price range, including me. I would find something better to spend my money on, but this is solid. Why does it cost this much? What's special about tête de cuvées, they're top wines, they're only made in the best vintages. If there's the best vintage, tête de cuvées will be made. If it's not a great vintage, they will not make tête de cuvées. So it is the best of the best. This champagne house has been around for hundreds of years. It's been associated with monarchies and kingdoms, and the fact that we might have been introduced to it through popular culture or whatever you might have it, these wines have long-standing traditions as being some of the best in the world. Do you pay for some of that? Of course you do. Everything that we do, you pay for the name. T-shirt producer, because it has a particular name on it, it costs more. You pay for the name in this. Is it worth it? That really depends on where your budget is and where you're at. But if you have the means, maybe you should try it. So my favorite today is this particular bottle, the Michel Gonnet. This delivers on all those things that I think that even some of the tête de cuvées can't touch. At $57 all day, every day, this is where my money goes. We should be drinking sparkling wine every day. Let's pop the top and let's get the party started. After all, it is called the Roaring 20s, isn't it? Drink more of this. You guys should drink this. You should fight over this, all of you.